Every year, as the last days of October approach, the world changes. Shadows seem to grow longer, winds howl with a sharper edge, and the air itself feels charged with an ancient tension. Streets fill with pumpkins carved into sinister grins, candles flickering inside them as if to remind us that Halloween is not merely a night of costumes and candy. It is a ritual, a threshold between the known and the unknown. But hidden beneath the laughter of trick-or-treaters and the glow of neon decorations lies a darker truth. For centuries, Halloween has been intertwined with the shadowy figure of the witch. And tonight, we will peel back the layers of history, legend, and fear to ask the question: is the connection between Halloween and witchcraft a myth born of superstition, or is there something real hidden in the darkness? Before we dive into that mystery, I want you to remember this. Nothing you see on Halloween night is ever just what it seems. A mask is never just a disguise. A ritual is never just a story. And the witch, the figure so often mocked or dismissed, may not be just a myth at all. If you dare to uncover the chilling truth behind centuries of fear, watch until the end. And if you believe these forgotten stories deserve to be told, make sure to subscribe, share this video with those who think Halloween is harmless fun, and leave a comment telling us what you believe, myth or truth. To understand the connection between Halloween and witchcraft, we must first go back to the very origins of the holiday itself. Long before it was called Halloween, the ancient Celts celebrated Samhain, a festival that marked the end of the harvest and the beginning of the dark half of the year. On the night of October 31st, they believed the veil between the living and the dead grew dangerously thin. Spirits, both benevolent and malevolent, could walk among the living. To protect themselves, people lit great bonfires, offered sacrifices, and wore disguises to confuse wandering souls. But within these rituals lay practices that would later be condemned as witchcraft, divination, attempts to communicate with the dead, and the use of charms to ward off evil. What the Celts saw as sacred traditions, the Christian church would later brand as sorcery. When Christianity spread across Europe, the church sought to suppress these pagan rituals, but the people did not easily let go of their beliefs. The old customs survived, often in secret. By the Middle Ages, the church had begun to demonize not only Samhain, but those who carried on its traditions. Women who practiced herbal medicine, midwives who knew the secrets of healing, and anyone suspected of calling upon the spirits of the dead were accused of witchcraft. The night of October 31st, once a sacred time of transition, became a night feared as a gathering of witches. The church preached that witches met in secret covens, flying through the night on broomsticks to join the devil in dark Sabbaths. And what better night to imagine such horrors than the eve when spirits themselves were believed to walk the earth? Imagine a medieval village, its streets silent except for the rustle of dry leaves. Families huddled in their homes, candles flickering nervously as priests warned them from the pulpit about the dangers of the witch. They were told that on All Hallows' Eve, witches performed their most powerful rituals, summoning demons, cursing crops, and stealing the souls of children. Masks and costumes, once meant to protect from spirits, were now condemned as tools of the devil. And so, the link between Halloween and witchcraft grew stronger, not from truth, but from fear and the power of the church to shape belief. But was it all myth? Or was there something real beneath the hysteria? To the common people of the Middle Ages, witches were not abstract figures. They were neighbors, widows, or outsiders who lived at the edge of town. Suspicion could arise from something as simple as a strange look, a sick cow, or a sudden storm. And on Halloween night, when the world felt most fragile, paranoia reached its peak. Stories spread of black cats prowling the streets, believed to be witches in disguise. Broomsticks leaning by the door became symbols of flight through the night sky. Even the cauldron, a simple tool for cooking, was transformed into a vessel for dark potions and curses. Over time, these symbols became inseparable from Halloween itself, a night when the line between superstition and reality blurred until no one could tell the difference. As centuries passed, the fear of witchcraft grew into obsession. The late Middle Ages and the early modern period saw the rise of witch hunts across Europe. In places like Germany, Scotland, and France, thousands of men and women were accused of practicing witchcraft, tortured until they confessed to impossible crimes, and burned at the stake. And while these trials did not always take place on Halloween, the holiday loomed in the background as a time of heightened suspicion. For many, October 31st was not a night of fun. It was a night when witches were believed to be most powerful, a night when the devil himself roamed the earth. The link between Halloween and witchcraft was reinforced by the very symbols used by the church to terrify the faithful. Illustrations from medieval texts show witches gathered under the moonlight, casting spells as skeletal figures dance around them. Sermons warned that those who lit fires on Halloween were not honoring the saints but summoning demons. Even simple traditions, like carving faces into turnips or pumpkins to ward off spirits, were condemned as witchcraft. And so the people were caught in a web of fear, where every shadow on Halloween night could be a spirit, and every strange woman could be a witch. But beyond the sermons and the trials, there were stories whispered in secret, stories that gave people reason to believe the myths might hold truth. Tales of figures seen in the fields on Halloween night, cloaked in black and moving silently through the fog. Accounts of animals behaving strangely, of crops withering overnight, of children falling ill without explanation. These stories spread from village to village, reinforced by the atmosphere of the season itself. The dying light, the creeping cold, the sense that the earth was slipping into darkness. Whether or not witches truly walked on Halloween, the fear made it feel undeniable. By the 16th and 17th centuries, the witch hunts reached their peak, and Halloween became more than just a pagan remnant. It became a night of accusation. In some towns, people were warned not to dress in disguise, lest they be mistaken for witches. Bonfires, once meant to protect communities, were now seen as defenses against covens gathering in the night. Even the ringing of church bells on Halloween was said to ward off witches flying overhead. And so, what began as a festival of transition became, in the imagination of many, a battlefield between good and evil, saints and sorcery, God and the devil. And yet, amid all this hysteria, the witch also became a symbol of something deeper. To those who feared her, she represented chaos, rebellion, and the breakdown of order. To those who lived under her shadow, she was a scapegoat, blamed for everything that could not be explained. And to us, centuries later, she has become inseparable from Halloween itself. Pointed hats, broomsticks, black cats, and cauldrons are not relics of true witchcraft. They are the echoes of a history written in fear, persecution, and the need to explain the unexplainable. But here is the question that lingers like a whisper in the dark. If all of this was only myth, then why do so many stories persist? Why do people still report strange happenings on Halloween night? Why do black cats and broomsticks, carved pumpkins and whispered spells still send a chill down our spines? Perhaps the myths were not born entirely from imagination. Perhaps the rituals of Samhain carried something more than symbolism. Perhaps those accused of witchcraft were not always innocent. Or perhaps the power of belief itself created the truth people feared. Halloween and witchcraft. For centuries, they have been bound together by stories, symbols, and shadows. And yet, the deeper we look, the harder it becomes to say where myth ends and reality begins. What is certain is this: Halloween was never just a night of fun. It was, and perhaps still is, a night when doors open that should remain closed. A night when the presence of witches, real or imagined, feels closest. And this is only the beginning of our descent. Because while the myths of the Middle Ages and the fears of the church shaped much of the Halloween we know, the story does not end there. In the centuries that followed, new legends arose. Real cases of witchcraft were recorded, rituals were whispered about in secret, and Halloween itself became a magnet for those who sought to harness its power. The question of myth or truth only grows darker as we enter the modern age. If the Middle Ages cemented the fear of witches as symbols of Halloween, the centuries that followed only deepened the shadows. The witch was no longer just a figure of folklore or superstition. She became a cultural obsession, an enemy to be hunted, a scapegoat for every misfortune. But as time moved forward, the question became unavoidable. Were these tales nothing but myth, or did some fragments of truth linger beneath the surface? To answer, we must journey into the modern age, where Halloween and witchcraft continued their dance, sometimes in blood, sometimes in fire, and sometimes in whispers that still echo today. By the 17th century, witch hunts had spread to the New World. In Puritan New England, fear of sorcery mingled with religious zeal, reaching a fever pitch in the infamous Salem witch trials of 1692. Though the hysteria did not occur on Halloween night, its spirit haunted the season forever. Young girls claimed to be bewitched, neighbors accused neighbors, and the courts demanded confessions at any cost. 19 innocent people were executed, and many more imprisoned. The Salem trials etched into history the terrifying power of belief. Once the word witch was spoken, no disguise or denial could save you. And though Salem's hysteria eventually subsided, the legacy lingered, forever tying the idea of witches to the American imagination, of autumn nights and Halloween's spectral presence. As the 18th and 19th centuries unfolded, belief in literal witchcraft began to decline, but Halloween continued to grow as a cultural event. Immigrants from Ireland and Scotland brought their traditions across the Atlantic, blending Old World superstitions with New World celebrations. Jack-o'-lanterns replaced carved turnips, costumes became common once again, and stories of witches transformed from accusations of sorcery to tales whispered around the fire. But behind the laughter and games, the association remained. Even in these more enlightened centuries, whispers of rituals performed on Halloween persisted. Some claimed that witches gathered on October 31st to summon spirits, to divine the future, or to pay homage to the devil himself. Whether truth or rumor, the idea was enough to keep fear alive. By the late 19th century, Halloween had begun to shift into the holiday we know today. Parties, parades, and trick-or-treating spread across towns, especially in the United States. But as the holiday became more commercial, it also became fertile ground for darker imaginations. Newspapers printed cautionary tales of witches, warning that those who mocked them with costumes might unknowingly invite curses. Folklorists recorded stories of shadowy figures seen crossing fields on Halloween night, their outlines human, but their presence undeniably otherworldly. And then there were the stories of rituals, strange gatherings in the woods, bonfires where chants could be heard, circles drawn in the earth. Whether these rituals were truly conducted by witches, or whether they were the imaginations of frightened witnesses, no one could say for certain. But they became part of the Halloween legend. October 31st as the Witches' Night, the 20th century brought an even stranger twist. In an era of science and modernity, one might expect witchcraft to fade into obscurity. Yet, it was during this century that witchcraft returned, not as accusation, but as practice. The rise of Wicca and modern paganism in the mid-1900s revived ancient rituals, many of which drew directly from Samhain traditions. Practitioners honored Halloween, or Samhain, as a sacred time when the veil between worlds was thin. They lit candles for the dead, performed divination, and celebrated the cycles of nature. To them, witchcraft was not a curse, but a way of connecting with the earth and the unseen. But to outsiders, these rituals only reinforced the old fears. The image of Halloween as the witches' holiday grew stronger than ever, even as witches themselves sought to reclaim their traditions from centuries of slander. At the same time, urban legends flourished. In small towns and big cities alike, stories spread of witches who performed sinister acts on Halloween night. Tales of black cats sacrificed, of children disappearing, of shadowy figures in cloaks moving silently through graveyards. Police departments in the United States and Europe sometimes issued warnings, urging parents to keep children close on October 31st, feeding the narrative that danger lurked in the night. Whether these warnings were based on real threats or on lingering superstition, the result was the same: fear. Halloween became not just a holiday of fun, but a night of unease where every shadow could conceal something darker. And then came the cursed stories, accounts of Halloween nights gone horribly wrong, forever, linked to witchcraft in the popular imagination. There were reports of seances gone awry, where participants swore they contacted something far more sinister than a lost loved one. Stories of cursed costumes that brought tragedy to those who wore them. Accounts of masks that seemed to whisper when no one was near. And in every town, there was always the rumor. A coven meets in the woods nearby, and on Halloween, their power is strongest. Whether myth, rumor, or rare moments of truth, these stories cemented the idea that Halloween was not just about make-believe. Something real, something terrifying, might linger behind the veil. As the decades passed, Hollywood amplified the terror. Films like Hocus Pocus, The Blair Witch Project, and countless horror movies turned witches into icons of Halloween. But cinema did more than entertain. It reinforced old fears, planting the image of witches dancing under the moon into millions of minds. And while the line between fiction and reality blurred, the effect was undeniable. Halloween and witchcraft became inseparable in the global imagination. To celebrate one was, in some way, to acknowledge the shadow of the other. But even beyond movies and legends, modern witchcraft has not disappeared. To this day, practitioners of pagan faiths still honor Samhain, lighting candles, casting circles, and calling upon spirits of the dead. Many insist that their rituals are peaceful, meant to honor ancestors and nature. Yet others whisper of groups who take the night more seriously, who perform darker ceremonies, invoking forces that should not be disturbed. Stories of sacrifices, of blood offerings, of curses cast on Halloween night continue to circulate, whispered in fear and fascination alike. And whether these are rare truths or persistent myths, one fact remains. Halloween is the one night each year when witchcraft feels closest to reality. So, is the connection between Halloween and witchcraft myth or truth? The answer may depend on what you believe. Historically, the association was fueled by fear, superstition, and the church's determination to control the people. Many of the symbols we link to witches, the broomstick, the black cat, the pointed hat, were products of paranoia, not reality. And yet, rituals linked to Samhain were real. People did believe in divination, in spirits, in the power of charms and spells. And in the modern world, witchcraft is not dead. It thrives, in both harmless traditions and darker whispers. Perhaps the line between myth and truth was never meant to be clear. Perhaps that is what gives Halloween its power. The uncertainty, the fear that behind the costumes and candy lies something ancient, something real. As you walk the streets this Halloween, look carefully at the decorations around you. The witch on the broomstick, the black cat arching its back, the jack-o'-lantern glowing in the dark. Are these images just harmless symbols, or echoes of something far older, far darker, that refuses to die? And if you pass someone cloaked in black, their face hidden in shadow, ask yourself, are they only wearing a costume, or are they hiding what they truly are? Because Halloween and witchcraft are not just stories, they are warnings. They are reminders that the veil between myth and truth, between the living and the dead, between innocence and danger, is thinnest on October 31st. And on that night, the witch is never far away. So now I turn the question to you. Do you believe the connection between Halloween and witchcraft is only myth, spun from centuries of fear? Or do you believe that behind the laughter of trick-or-treaters and the glow of carved pumpkins, something real and ancient still stirs? Let us know in the comments below. And if you've ever felt the chill of unseen eyes watching you on Halloween night, share your story, because perhaps you were closer to the truth than you realized. And remember, this is only one of many dark secrets hidden within the history of Halloween. If you dare to know more, subscribe to this channel, share this video with those who laugh at the shadows, and stay with us, because the night is far from over.